There you go. There you go. Good. So she just decided to walk off kind of as I was getting on. And so that's okay. Then we'll just go do a little bit of work, bend her around till she kind of slows her feet or stops her feet, and use that as a bit of an exercise for her to start to understand that bending is, we can use that positioning of her body to soften her and lengthen the body and bring her to a little bit of bring her down a gait from whatever gait to a stop, or from within the gait to bring it a little slower. Good girl. As opposed to just drawing back on both reins and kind of shortening her neck and kind of contracting her a little bit and then creating some tension. With her, you want to encourage that length of the neck and that length of the body as much as possible, because she is quite short coupled and short and blocky in the muscles to begin with. So we want to encourage as much length as we can. So bending through the body, contracting the rib cage on one side and expanding the rib cage on the other side is a really good way to encourage that length through the body, even while you're trying to, say, bring her down or create some softness or some flexion. If she's a little quick, using that bend to help her make that connection to lengthening and softening into the transition, as opposed to just pulling back on both reins and stiffly going into it. And so we're working a lot with her on flexions in the neck, understanding what to do with the rein and not just kind of pushing against it and resisting, because that's kind of her go-to. So we really need to build in an understanding of bending through the body, softening in the neck from the rein and from the hand, and just giving a better response to our asking bending aids, and not just pushing the nose against it and wanting to run backwards or start to go up. Good. And then possibly at some point going up and even going over. She wouldn't be a difficult horse to teach that to at the moment. And we kind of know this from, good girl, from when she was young and tied to the trailer. Anytime she feels a bit of a restriction or a bit of a pressure, her go-to is to go up, right? To go up and get away from it or pull back or whatever. So that even shows up, in the initial times of doing her feet, right? When she feels, again, that pressure, that holding, and what is a restriction to her, or what she perceives as a restriction, her go-to is to stand on her hind legs, get a better view of the world. And that is no different under saddle. So really just working the body loose and trying to work the shoulders as much as possible at this stage and at this part of her development, really trying to loosen up the front end so that the hind end can come through a little bit more, and that she starts to carry herself in a little better way and doesn't just need to, again, kind of push the hand up or push the head up against the hand and resist there. A large part of that is also caused by, obviously she's quite downhill. That's just her build. She's pretty heavy on the forehand. Heavy on the forehand, kind of closed up in the shoulders. And when she's that closed up and kind of collapsed in the chest, and then she has the front feet, you can kind of think of them as kind of planted in the floor. Even though she's moving, she can push off the front feet. And if she drops the shoulders down and pushes against the floor with her front feet, then the chest kind of pops out. When the chest pops out, she gets a little hollow in the back. So the chest kind of pops here when she pushes against the floor with her front feet. And then when the front feet push in the floor, the chest pops out, the back goes hollow, and the head comes up, and she braces there. And you feel it, and it shows up as bracing in the hand, or really getting stiff, or coming up and poking her nose out and kind of up here and resisting that flexion. That's the symptom of the rest of her body kind of not working optimally at the moment. And all this is, we just have to keep in mind too that she's very young, with just finishing up 2 months of work. So this is a work in progress that is something that will be continued to be developed for quite some time. But the more that we can help her kind of loosen up the shoulders, open up the chest, create a little bit more range of motion in front, and come a little bit elevated in the front, then we create space from that elevation. We create space for the hind legs to come through and start to carry a little bit more. The hind legs come underneath a little bit more, they carry a little bit more weight, and they help raise the front end up from that carrying, as opposed to just pushing out behind her and kind of pushing the weight downwards onto the front end more. Bring your shoulder. Very nice, good. So we can just take our time in the walk, and we can work her loose in the walk, create the flexion, create the bend in the body, and really opening up the rein to give her the idea of what to do. Ride the inside hind over, good. And that's why I have the whip as well, because then I can indicate the direction we're going. I can sit a little bit towards the inside hind, I can look to the inside hind, I can put my inside leg a little bit back to the inside hind, and then I can lay the whip on her hip and just kind of help really fine tune that. Good for you. And really indicate to her which body part it is that we're speaking to and trying to move. Bring the shoulder around again, good for you. So lots of really exaggerated movements in my body. I'm going to sit back on the right hind a little bit. Feel like I'm bringing my shoulders behind my hips a little. I'm going to open my inside rein to connect to the inside hind. I'm going to look in the direction of the inside hind. I'm going to touch with my inside leg, touch and release, kiss to her to indicate that hind leg. And if need be, then I could even with her just bring my hand back and touch her on the hip. But whatever I need to do to make that good. Good girl. Yes, good. And just kind of feel that through that movement that she offers a little bit more forward in the walk. She gets a little bit more swing through her body. Feels like her hips start to move back and forth behind the saddle. And I feel a little wave of energy coming from the hips, building under my seat, to the withers, and then out the pole. And as she starts to soften more and more, I can see when the light catches it right. Good for you. I can see the ripple of muscle from her pole, or from her withers up to her pole, just under her mane, starting to flex and bulge. So she's developing the strength in the right part of her body, the right part of the neck. As she learns to soften the under neck muscles and hang her head off of the upper neck muscles. So she's not bracing herself up with the under neck muscles and getting stronger there. She's learning to soften them and then hang her head off the upper neck muscles. And that's more through the positioning and the movement and the posture of her body, more so than me pulling her nose in and making her round. I can use the reins to influence things as I need, but even at this stage of her training, I want to feel like I can start to introduce her more and more to moving off my body position and mirroring what my body is doing, so that as her body starts to become more and more supple, the balance starts to come more, the strength starts to come more. We don't have to ride what we see in front of the saddle. we can ride what we're feeling under the saddle and behind the saddle. And that's the ultimate goal. But we just have to work towards getting there. And then we can walk forward and just let her stretch down a little bit. So as she starts to move better through the body, and she starts to find that suppleness and that softness throughout, and the shoulders start to come up, the chest opens up, and the withers raise up towards us a little bit, and the body becomes a little bit more horizontal, not downhill like this, but a little more horizontal through the lifting of the front. Then when she stretches the neck out and down, because the body is up, the withers are up, it doesn't feel like the whole horse just disappears in front of you then. As opposed to if she just starts out and we pull her head down, but she's still on the forehand, then it feels like the whole horse just vanishes in front of the saddle. So we want the ability to start to work the shoulders around the hindquarters, make the shoulders mobile. Yeah. And not really worrying too much, there's a deep breath, not really worrying too much about the position of her head right now, because that will start to fall into place more and more and more when the body starts to get organized and she understands. There we go. Also, the more that we open the body up front to back and side to side, and we get the rib cage opening and contracting on one side, stretching on the other side, it's really hard for them to do all of that and hold their breath. So then you start to get those deep breaths coming out as they start to let go of that tension and a little bit of tightness, but that starts to let go from way down deep inside of them. It's not just something that we're kind of pulling them and pushing them into a position so that they look a certain way, working them a certain way so they feel a certain way, and then they start to let go from right inside, from deep inside. When they start to let go like that, then they mentally start to really connect to how they feel, how their body is feeling, and then how the body is feeling is how the mind is feeling, and then they really start to soak in that information, and they're like, damn, this feels pretty good. I think I would like to move this way a lot more. If we just kind of got on her and started trotting around and cantering around and pulling on her mouth and flexing her and bending her and making her give, and kind of the sometimes you hear like collect them, she's too young for any of that, for collection, but she's also too green to be, no horse should be done that way, but it's not going to be any benefit at all to just start pulling on her face and making her do stuff when she doesn't understand what it is that she's doing. If we can ride the body in a certain way, create the bend. Again, I'm clucking to move the shoulders. The sound in the other video wasn't that good, so maybe I should do that again. When I'm clucking to her, it's an indication that I would like her to move the shoulders. That could be either moving the shoulder from the left to the right, or right to the left, or one shoulder up out of the way. Or as we progress, it'll be if I put my leg a little bit towards the girth and I close the leg and then cluck to her, it'll be an indicator that I want the shoulders to kind of come up to get the front end a little bit more mobile. Kissing noise is for some energy or to move the hind legs. It's more, the kissing sound is more, you can think of it from the girth area back for engagement. That could be moving the hind legs sideways or the hindquarters sideways, or just energizing to go forward. Use a shushing noise for backing up. So if I start to turn here and she gets a little too braced and starts to run through my hand, I can make the turn and shush. So then she starts to rock herself back a little bit. Very good. And I don't have to pull on her face. I can just use that verbal shush so that she shifts the weight slightly back, and then I can bring the shoulders around a little bit more. So just trying to get her in a frame of body and a frame of mind where the information that I'm trying to put in there has the opportunity to sink in and really mean something. the stiffnesses and stuff that she has in the jaw and the flexions and the tendency to want to brace into that and go up is a symptom of everything else that I talked about in the shoulders and the body. But what would be common in a lot of places, and I've seen a lot of this, and I don't agree with it at all, but she's the kind of horse that in some places would be in, could be draw reins or what they might call a bidding rig, or she might have her nose tied to her tail or somehow winched back and tied in place and tied to the saddle horn, or that's no good. So you're kind of treating the symptom, and you're not addressing what's actually happening, and the fact that she doesn't have a chance to even learn the things before you're starting to force her into a position. Also, what happens a lot of times in those cases, in let's say like draw reins or something, if you're riding them, you can winch the head down because you have a lot of mechanical advantage at your fingertips. But lots of times the head is down, but they're still trying to get it back up, so they're really bracing and tensing and stressing the under neck muscles. So you actually have this picture of a horse that's softer and rounder, and in a lot of cases they're getting stronger and more braced in the under neck muscles. The muscles you're trying to teach them not to use become the muscles that they're really using in an attempt to try to get their head back up. So you strengthen those muscles in an attempt to soften those muscles. This is kind of counterproductive. So, there's many roads lead to Rome, but if the means have to justify the ends, I think. So if you can kind of say that you've taken the time and you've done what you feel is correct in a way to help them, then you're okay. If you have to finish your ride thinking, I'm not really sure that was a wise thing to do, then maybe it wasn't. So also we can start to, it's okay if she goes around sometimes with a little bit of elevation in the pole, because we want to be able to do that too down the road, is ride her a little bit more elevated but still feel like she's soft and relaxed. So we don't want to lift the nose up to where she's, where we create a hollow back, but we can ride her with a little higher pole. We can pick up on the right rein, move the right shoulder. And there'll be moments, lots of moments, when you go into a little bit of work like that, a little bit of lateral work, a little bit of work that's a little more difficult, and they break into a walk, or they just lose the gait that you're in because the work you're doing is quite difficult. In that case, you just kind of regroup. Good girl. Yeah. Flex a little bit here and then give when she softens, and just trying to ride around, guide her a little bit, ride the left shoulder a little bit towards the right side here. Good girl. We'll bring her all the way around. Now the right shoulder. Very nice. And then forward. Good. Just let her trot around here for a moment and just kind of work on the forward, and just feel her kind of moving through the body and starting to get a little bit of freedom of movement. Just go a little lighter in my seat, kind of take my weight a little bit more through the seat and the thighs, so she feels like I'm not coming out of the saddle necessarily, but I am creating a very small space between me and her in the saddle, and she feels that she can then come up a little bit under my seat with her back, kind of raise the back a little bit, carry herself a little differently. Good. And her ears are kind of always, she's back on me, checking in, and then she's listening to the birds in the stalls there, and then she's checking back in. So I really like this, that she's just part of the conversation, and even though there's things that she could be kind of looking at and paying attention to more than me. She's checking in, and she's just part of, we didn't kind of just have a two-way conversation a little bit. Very good, good. Yeah. And it's not just me kind of handing out orders to her and having her, you know, just following them because there's a consequence if she doesn't. Like a, you know what I mean, sometimes it's a little bit more like the rider is a drill sergeant and you have to do it this way or else kind of thing, right? And it's one thing for a horse to work with you and do something because they want to and they understand it and they feel good about it, as opposed to a horse that's working with you because of the consequences if they don't. Nice. I heard a thing somewhere one time where the person said, it was in regards to horses, of course that's all I listen to, but it went like, yes has very little value if no isn't an option. And it made a lot of sense. And I think that's, you know, that doesn't just apply to horses, but it's a good thing to keep in mind, right? So if the horse knows that they have the ability to have some input in the conversation, they're a lot more willing to give those opinions and those feelings, as opposed to one that's just kind of shut down and drilled to you must do this or else type of thing. Good. So when I go into the turns and the circles and all of that stuff and bending her, straightening her and doing all that, I want to initiate that from my body. So if we're going to turn to the left, for example, I'm going to bring, if you think of her body turning to the left side of the body, the left shoulder, the left hip get a little closer together because she has to contract the body that way. The outside of the body gets a little longer so she can make that turn. I want to pick up that exact same feeling in my body before I ask her with any other aid. And I start that in the groundwork and looking to have her mirror what my body is doing. So ultimately what we want to work on as we progress and she gets better educated and she starts to feel us more and respond to us more is I want to have the image in my mind that my shoulders put her shoulders where I would like them to be, my hips put her hips where I would like them to be, and my middle, my rib cage puts her middle or her rib cage where we would like it to be. So if I contract my ribs a little on the right and I turn my shoulders a little to the right and she starts to already come with me, and I don't have to then use my hand, use my leg, use my down the road, my spur, my whip, my bigger spur, my bigger whip, and then maybe have somebody on the ground chasing me with a whip. So I can just start to influence her direction. It doesn't necessarily even have to be direction left to right. It can be forward in the trot or back in the trot, forward in the canter and back in the walk and back. Going into collection from my body and not from pulling on the reins and making the horse short in the body and slow. So even now at this point in her work is riding her like she understands that, even though she doesn't, but just riding her as though she does. So I'm going to start turning. I'll draw my left hip a little bit towards my right hip, towards my right shoulder, and I get a little shorter on the ribs on the right and a little longer on the ribs on the left, all the while trying to stay balanced on both seat bones. I don't want to just do like this and kind of collapse. I need to make that a turning type of feeling. Draw my inside hip up a little bit, sit on my outside, turn my shoulders a bit to the right, and then I can turn my hips a little to the right and bring her around here with as little influence from the hand as possible. See if we don't spook at the ball and I fall off. And just really working on how little can I use my reins, especially while I use the other aids, more specifically just my body, and see if I can bring her around. I want to keep the walk going. Good girl. Then I want to bring my energy up a little bit. And have her start to read that as well. So my energy up means we go. My energy down means we slow. So I start to work towards the feeling that I can do. I don't have to make stuff happen. I can just set it up in a way that I let it happen. So as we progress, I'd get the walk to where it's a little bit energized, and instead of having to make her trot, I let the trot out of that walk. Then I start to bring the trot back a little bit, and then let the walk happen. Good girl. Yeah. And then she starts to, as soon as I kind of start to think about that, she's already partway there. I can work on bringing her up, bringing her down. Can turn the left shoulder around. I'm going to sit. In this case, I'm going to contract the left side of my ribs because I want to bring the shoulder around. Good. And then if she's bent to the left, this way, coming to the wall, and I want to straighten her, I don't want to pull on my right rein to straighten her. I'm going to straighten my right body and bring her straight. So it's really common for people, if you've ridden a lot, or had instruction or whatever, to think of bending the horse around your inside leg and creating that bend. So here, and then if you ask somebody to straighten the horse, usually what they do is then pull on the outside rein. But if you notice what happened there, let's try that again. When I come around, so I'm bending her around my inside leg, and then I'm going to straighten her. She's bent around my body. I'm going to straighten her. I'm sitting to the left. She's bent to the left. I pull on the right rein, and her nose twists that way because everything about her is bent to the left, but I just pulled her to the right and twisted her nose that way. So then, if I come to the left, contracting my left rib cage, expanding my right rib cage a little bit, I'll exaggerate it some, like this. And I want to straighten her. Now I just shift my rib cage, and then the body starts to straighten, and the neck straightens because of the body. Hopefully that makes sense. Sometimes I just ramble. Girl. So again, we're just working on all of this basic stuff. That will be the base, obviously, of all the advanced stuff when the time comes. I'm going to straighten her here a little bit, sit to the right, and just see if I can. And then I'm going to come with the hand. Good. And a lot of this at this stage, truthfully, is just playing. I'm going to sit to the right. Now I feel that she's flexed to the right a little bit towards the wall. I can move the right shoulder away from the wall a little bit. Now I'm going to sit to the left. A little more to the left. Now shift my weight to the right. And go down the wall a little bit this way. And that's difficult, so we don't do it for too long. Straighten her. I'm going to sit. Close up the right side now. Good. Sitting straight. I come around this corner here. I'm going to sit, close up my left side. pick up on the left rein, left shoulder. Now look to the right. Super. Little bits, yeah, little bits of a lot of things. So we're always mixing it up, doing something different, and not staying stuck on one thing for too long. So she stays invested, she stays interested, and she knows that we're not going to do these harder exercises to the point that it just gets frustrating. But that we can touch into the harder stuff a little bit, bring the intensity up just a bit, and then of course that's tailored to her ability. We bring the intensity up a little bit, push into that discomfort, and then go out to something that's easier. So little bit by little bit, what's difficult now in a week or 10 days, 2 weeks, a month, whatever, is the normal. And then we go into the next thing. Yay. So we'll try, see what she thinks here. I have cantered her under saddle earlier on. Typically what I end up doing is once the canter, if they offer up the canter, I go with it, and then I don't really push the canter too much until I kind of get the walk and the trot and that understanding a little better. Of course that depends on the horse too, but and then I start to go back into the canter work. So I haven't cantered her for a little bit under saddle, but we'll give it a shot, just see how she feels. And so when I go into the canter, I have a sequence of aids that I use, and then a little whistle, and the little whistle is kind of, I go through that in the groundwork. The whistle is kind of the cue to pop up into canter. So then I don't have to try to chase them into the canter or get really strong with my legs and try to make them canter, to where you get a little too strong with the legs, then sometimes they start to brace against that and create some tension, and then you start to work harder, so you get a little more tension in your body, and then you have two tensions kind of battling each other, and it's hard to get to where you want to go. So if I use the verbal cue for that, it helps as an indicator to pick up the canter without me having to get stronger. I don't care where she picks up the canter, so if I start asking here, for example, and she picks it up down there, that's fine with me right now. I don't care if she goes into it with her head in the air or head down, or that the transition is perfect. Just at this stage, looking that they go into canter, they start to work on the balance, they find some comfort in it, some confidence, and then when the time comes, we can start cleaning it up. Trying to make it too perfect right away is also a recipe for having to try to make the canter better for the next 2 years, kind of thing. Good. I'll ask her to step back here. Good. Very nice. So in the rein back, what I really want with her is to feel like she elevates up in the front and shifts the weight back and then steps back. Again, because she's on the forehand naturally, we don't really just want to encourage a different posture in the rein back. So again, I'm going to lighten my seat a little bit, take a little bit of weight in my stirrups, lighten my seat so she feels that she starts to go forward a little bit, and then I just lighten the weight off my seat bones, and she feels that space open up, and then she steps back because of that. So I'm going to lighten the seat a little bit, close my leg just a little, pick up on the rein. Good. And from that lightening of the seat, then again, down the road, we can use that as our backup aid, and we don't have to be pulling her backwards by her teeth and creating tension again. All right, little one. Ready? Good. Good. Ready? Yeah. Thank you. Good girl. Within the canter also, I want to feel like I'm sitting a little bit towards the outside hind leg and kind of having the feeling that I'm in this direction, that I'm riding the left hind leg, a little bit back here and kind of up here. So trying with the hand just to give her the feeling that she can go forward and that she gets a little bit more uphill in the canter than what her natural tendency is. And again, just looking for a little bit of progress, nowhere near perfection, just kind of touching on it and helping her feel good about it. And then the rest will fall into place. You ready? Thank you. Wrong lead doesn't matter either. It's just the idea of taking the canter. It's a little bit towards the left hind. Looking up. Good. Yes, good. And that just kind of encourages a little bit of the lowering of the hindquarters. I mean, very small, right? She's, again, just at the stage that she's at. But it takes away that tendency to be cantering downwards on the forehand and kind of that jarring, stuttering kind of canter that they can get. Yeah. Yeah, good. Good girl. Lots of moments for her to just kind of sit and think about that. Soak it in. Good girl. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. And so that's kind of where we're at the moment. Like I said, this was kind of the biggest thing for her, the biggest issue that she had. Oftentimes I'll do some in-hand work before I get on, just working on the flexions and stuff like that. And you know, earlier on there was moments where you'd go to give her a little bit of that of flexion and she would really resist against it and kind of go backwards. And she has a very strong tendency to do that. So that's sort of what we need to work on. But again, not by addressing just the fact that we need to sit here and wag her head back and forth till her nose touches our boot on each direction, because that's not really where that thing is showing up as a misunderstanding of what to do with the pressure. The pressure could be very small, it's just the pressure is more than nothing, so then it's too much in certain cases. Another thing to kind of keep in mind with her, just as her natural way of going, and every horse has one or the other, but when she's going forward at the moment, her tendency is to be a little bit with this right hind stepping to the inside. So if we were going in this direction here, there's a tendency for her to step out with this right hind a little bit. So when she steps out with the right hind, she tends to then push with the right hind more behind her, which then diagonally pushes weight down onto the left shoulder. So then she gets a little bit, see if I can kind of, if we create this right hind in a little bit, and the weight is on the left shoulder even as she's standing here. If I sit like this and kind of help her, the weight's down on the left shoulder. Her head is a little bit to the right, and her ribs are pushed to the left, like this. So as she walks with this right hind out behind her, she pushes the weight down on this left shoulder. So then if we just pick up on the left rein, because we feel this, we pick up on the left rein and we try to pull her nose around without fixing the right hind underneath and the left shoulder up and the rib cage and then the nose, then we can get the flexion. So there, she comes a little bit this way now. The left rib cage is kind of not pushing into my leg anymore. Now I'm sitting this way to help that a little, but she's also curved a little bit in her neck, and then we could work on the flexion. So if she's set up in the body in every way to go the wrong way, and we just pull her nose around because we feel more weight on our left rein, and we start jerking on her face, but the rest of her body is still going to the right, and she's weighted on the left shoulder, we have a pretty big task to overcome, and all we're doing then is just kind of giving her the sense that do what you want with everything else here, but you got to bring your nose around here by pulling on her face, and she really can't, right? She has to get the whole body kind of organized and then come around. So in that case, if you were to do that, that's where you could kind of teach her, because of her tendency to just lock and block and go up, that's where you could really bring that on. And then once you teach her that, if you don't have the awareness of riding the body and you start pulling on her face to get her to do that, she starts going up. Now you obviously open up a whole new can of worms and the fight just continues. So then that's where the horses like her kind of get stuck into auxiliary training methods to kind of make them behave. And she has a pretty short fuse too, right? So you can, which is steadily improving. I don't want to give you the impression that she's like that, but just from seeing her from a baby up until now, that's her tendency. She has a little bit of a short fuse. She has her red-headed moments where she really just she's kind of the princess of the pasture, and she wants to do her thing. So we have to find a way to kind of work with her and help her and let her kind of come on board with us a little bit is all. Right? Yeah. So there we go. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. It's Friday afternoon. It's been a good week, so we'll call it good. Well, I obviously don't have her in the Western saddle anymore. I switched her over to, this is a Baroque saddle. It's kind of a similar dressage-y feel to it, kind of a Western dressage cross sort of thing. It's adjustable with a wrench in the gullet, so I can fit it to her a little bit more, and I like it more than the Western saddle anyway, so it works out pretty good. So good there. All right, thank you. Talk to you soon.